Good night, and welcome to the very first episode of Late Nights at the Talon, a series where I do my very own recap of my favorite show, Smallville. I was a huge fan of the series as a kid. I still am as an adult. It is a comfort show of mine. It is a show that I watch pretty much every single week, and I decided that I would start doing my very own recap for the show on YouTube, partially because there isn't that much Smallville content on YouTube. You know, a few months ago I was on here struggling to find some folks talking about this series that I love so much. One thing that I did find, however, was that two of the stars of the show, Michael Rosenbaum and of course Tom Welling, have their very own podcast about the series called Talkville, which I have been a huge fan of since I discovered it. Unfortunately, though, there isn't a ton of fan-made content on this platform, so I decided that I would help out a little bit with that and do my own recap show. If you're new here, my name is Jahjahhenny. I talk about music, and as of today, we're also discussing television series. So we're discussing all things Smallville on this show. The good, the bad, the ugly, which there rarely is because everybody on the show is hot for some reason. I hope everyone who was involved in casting this show is still working to this day, because you did your big one with this one. All right. If you're a fan of Smallville and this show that I'm doing now sounds like it's something that might be right up your alley, then feel free to hit that like button. Or you could wait until the end of this video, because it doesn't really make sense to like a video at the beginning. That's strange. I feel weird asking you to like the video when it literally just started. If you want to, you can. But you can also wait till the end to decide if you like it enough to stick around. And if you do decide that you like it enough to stick around, you could also subscribe to my channel. Without further ado, and with all that being said, let's get into the very first episode of Smallville. So the series opens with countless meteor rocks flying towards Earth. We soon find out that it is October 1989 in the town of Smallville, Kansas. Population of 25,001. Well, it's about to be 25,002 because our boy Kal-El is about to touch down on Earth for the very first time. We see a helicopter flying over cornfields carrying the billionaire Lionel Luthor and his ginger son, Lex Luthor. Baby Lex is afraid to fly. He is not having it in this helicopter. He won't even open his eyes. And honestly, I understand, because I was once a child who hated to fly, and now I'm an adult who doesn't enjoy it that much, so I understand where he's coming from. But the elder Luthor is not having it. He's like, boy, you're gonna have to get over it. We're the hoarders of wealth. This is how we travel, okay? We get to see Smallville from the air for the very first time, which is really cool because it really gives you that homey, comforting hometown, small town feel. And growing up, I yearned for the small town life. I wanted so badly to be from a place where there were vast cornfields and hills of green and a cute little main street, and everyone knew everyone's name. I did not grow up in a place like that. I grew up in a very small city, population of about 1 million people. Very different from the 25 to 45,000 people we see living in Smallville between 1989 and 2001. But I gotta tell you, as an adult who now lives in a bigger city, I still yearn for the small town life. I think it's a case of the grass is always greener, because I always hear that people from small towns yearn for the city and people from the city yearn for the small town life. And you know, there are pros and cons with both, but I still gotta tell you, I would not mind living in Smallville. Minus all the death and all the destruction and the mutants, of course, plus all of the hot people. We see a baby Lana Lang playing princess in her Aunt Nell's flower shop. Now, I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I think Aunt Nell is a little bit of a hussy, because she is clearly trying to flirt with Jonathan Kent when he walks into the shop. And unfortunately for her, his wife, Martha Kent, yes, the Martha Kent, walks in right alongside him. And we can clearly see the disappointment on Nell's face when she notices this. But girl, did you really think he was gonna come into your flower shop without his wife? His wife is the reason he's there, girl. Going at an attitude talking about, oh, you're here for tulips? an uncomplicated flower. Girly, cut it out. First of all, you scarlet letter, Martha Kent is a queen, okay? A queen in this house, and we will respect her as such, all right? Second of all, that box dye red is not going to get Jonathan Kent into your bed. That is just a fact. And I didn't even mean to make that rhyme. You will never be Martha Kent, Nell. Anyway, the Kents are in town for some tulips, as I said, and Martha decides to hang out with Lana for a little bit, showing off a bit of her maternal side. She yearns for motherhood, but my girl cannot get pregnant. But don't worry, your son will soon be in effect. Smallville is celebrating homecoming today, and its football team, the Crows, have just won the homecoming game. As the celebration starts to heat up, we see that the meteors are just on the horizon, burning into the atmosphere and getting ready to cause all sorts of chaos for the people of Smallville. Lex is in a cornfield for some reason. Lionel is presumably working on a land deal, or a land grab, should I say, because we know that he is a shady man, when suddenly a weak voice calls out for help in that cornfield. Lex is like, what the hell is going on? And he decides to venture out further to find out where the voice is coming from. He runs at the sight of an actual scarecrow, falls, face plants into the dirt, and discovers a teenage boy tied to a pole in the middle of the field with an S painted on his chest. The red S painted on the guy's chest is very heavy-handed, and as we will see later, is clearly a reference to our future Superman, as the same thing is unfortunately done to him. Every year, the Smallville High football team chooses a different person to strip down to his boxers, tie to a pole in the middle of the field, pin an S on his chest, and deem him this year's Scarecrow. I could not be a parent in this town, because if I find out that you took my child, stripped them out of the clothes that I bought for them, and tied them to a pole in the middle of a field, everybody getting sued. I do not care. The parents getting sued, the children getting sued, the school getting sued, the town getting sued. Everybody is getting sued up in here. I'm not playing with y'all. And a couple of y'all might be walking home with some lumps on your head, because how dare you, bitch? What makes things worse is that while this poor kid is tied to this pole, the meteor shower starts. We see meteors start to crash out of the sky and send a wave of dirt and debris over this kid tied to this pole and Lex. The town is gathering and seeing the smoke billow out of the sky, wondering what's going on. Girl, I'll tell you what's about to go on. A lot of y'all are about to lose your houses and your businesses, because the meteors are here to rock your shit. Lana's parents arrive back from the homecoming game to pick her up from her aunt's shop. And unfortunately, this is going to be the last time that Lana sees her parents. As they stand next to their car, they look up into the sky, and a meteor literally hits both of them and explodes. I'm not joking. The meteor literally, it's like the meteor had a vendetta against Lana's parents in particular, because it smashes them to bits. Ain't nothing left. Car explodes. Everything gone. How unfortunate. And the worst part about it, besides the fact that they're now dead, is that Lana saw the whole thing. The townsfolk of Smallville are running for their lives as dirt and debris and fire and brimstone and chaos rains down like a biblical plague on this town. I bet some people probably thought that's what was actually happening. Jonathan and Martha Kent are on their way home, and we see them pass the Smallville town sign, and a meteor immediately smashes it into pieces. And for some reason, Jonathan turns around with a smile on his face. I was like, why are you so excited about that? Or is that a nervous smile? You know how people nervously laugh and smile at stuff even when ain't shit funny? Maybe that's what was going on, but I just thought that was a strange facial expression. Lionel is looking for his son Lex, but it's too late. All that's left of him is a little tuft of ginger hair. He's dead. I'm just kidding. He's alive, but he's bald now. Martha and John have found themselves upside down in their truck when a little boy approaches them. What a little cutie. He's such a little cutie to this day. Like, every time I see that clip of him walking up to their truck and peering inside, I'm just like, oh, I would have adopted you too. You're just adorable. Martha wraps the little boy in a blanket, and the Kens soon discover a spaceship, with Martha remarking that his parents are definitely not from Kansas. Jonathan is worried. I mean, they can't keep the kid. What are they going to tell everybody? That they found him in a field? It's only partially true, as Martha quickly reminds him, we didn't find him. He found us. Ladies, gadies, and ladies, welcome to Smallville. As we come back to the show, it is now 2001 on the Kent farm. And I gotta say, some of my favorite parts of the show are when we get shots of the Kent farm before we jump into a scene there. Something about those shots is always just so comforting and cozy. And I always feel right at home, almost as if I grew up in the Kent house too. We see a raven-haired, now teenage Clark Kent sitting at his computer before school. Just want to say, for the very first time, but not the last time, that Tom Welling is one of the most beautiful men I've ever seen in my life. We get some quick product placement in the fridge as Clark grabs a bottle of milk and drinks straight out of the jar, remarking that he learned his manners on a farm. I yearn for a glass bottle of milk. I know that we still have glass bottles of milk. Like, I know I can go to the grocery store and buy a glass bottle of milk. For some reason, I never have. But every time I see this shot or see anyone in any movie or TV series back in the day just drink milk straight out of the bottle, I'm just like, dang, that's probably the most refreshing milk that they've ever had. And I'm trying to get in on that. The Kent home looks so cozy. I'm sorry, I have to keep saying it. Something about their house just looks so warm and inviting. Like, you know, it looks like it smells like fresh bread and cinnamon and fresh cut flowers. I'd really love to have breakfast there and then immediately take a nap on their couch. Clark has a permission slip for the football team, but he is clearly hesitant to ask his parents about it, already knowing what that answer will likely be. Jonathan doesn't want Clark playing. He feels that his superpowers give him an unfair advantage and that Clark can't guarantee the fairness or the safety of his teammates. Clark says that all he wants to do is go through high school without being a total loser, and my heart really breaks for him, and I completely understand where he's coming from. I grew up playing basketball and martial arts, soccer, baseball, and it was a very important part of my childhood. I can't imagine being told from a very young age that I couldn't play with my friends because I might hurt them. Or worse, someone might find out my secret and take me away from my parents. As a kid, I was totally on Clark's side. I mean, it's not fair. He just wants to be a regular dude, you know? But now that I'm an adult, I have a better understanding for what the Kents were trying to tell their kid, and it makes total sense that they didn't want him to play sports. I mean, it sucks because you could tell that they do want him to be able to participate in stuff like this, but they just can't risk it. At this point in the series, he's about 14, 15 years old, which is really, really young. I know that kids around that age feel that they're all grown up and they can make their own decisions, but the truth is you are still very much a child and you gotta listen to your parents because they might not always be right, but in this case, I can understand where they're coming from. But I also understand where Clark's coming from. Either way it goes, this shit sucks. At the end of the day, though, it does make a lot of sense that Martha and Jonathan are overprotective of Clark. I mean, all they know about him up to this point is that he fell out of the sky in a spaceship. They don't know where he's from. They don't even know all of the powers that he's going to acquire because up to this point, he doesn't have all of his powers yet. Honestly, they're better than me because I'd be afraid to let that boy leave the house at all. Clark heads out to catch the bus to school, but he just misses it. An occurrence that we discover is quite frequent because his friends, Chloe and Pete, made a bet, apparently, on whether or not he'd miss the bus that day. Chloe loses that bet because she's the one who bets that Clark will actually make the bus this time. Chloe might have her faults as a character, but I kind of love the fact that we're shown from the beginning that Chloe has always believed in Clark, even if she sometimes gets it wrong. Lucky for Clark, he does have super speed, so while he may have missed the bus, he never really has to worry about not being at school on time. We get to see that Smallville's town sign has been replaced and the population has grown from 25,001 to 45,001. It's about 20,000 more people in an 11-year time span, 12-year time span. Chloe questions whether or not Clark traveled through a black hole because there is no way that he made it to school before they did, especially considering that he missed the bus. But Clark tells them that he found a shortcut. A shortcut? Really, Clark? Why didn't he just tell his friends that his parents dropped him off? Wouldn't that be a lot easier to explain than I found a shortcut? Clark's excuses are awful. Clark and his friends are supposed to be about 14 or 15 at the start of this series, as they are freshmen at Smallville High. And I just have to say, they really did try with Tom. They did. From the hair, the messy tousled hair, to the clumsiness and overall awkwardness of his character, which is very true to Clark Kent. They tried to make him look like a 14-year-old, but that boy big as hell. He big. He is tall as hell. Now, if they were to reboot Smallville and do it present day, they would totally be able to get away with this. I mean, there are so many actors in their 20s and some even in their 30s who could pass as teenagers. But Tom Welling is a big boy. Pete reveals that he also wants to try out for the football team and that he and Clark were planning on doing it to avoid being this year's Scarecrow. Remember that boy we saw strung up at the beginning of the episode? Yeah, that was the Scarecrow of '89. No one wants to be put into that position. I mean, it's embarrassing, it's painful, and it pretty much solidifies your position as an outcast at the school. I've heard of hazing, but this is just cruel. I'm sure Kansas isn't like the warmest or the coldest place in the fall, but to be put up on a pole in your underwear all day and all night, that's gotta be uncomfortable. I don't blame them for wanting to try out for the team for the sole purpose of avoiding being put in that position. Also, I just have questions about that in general. I mean, like, do the football players come back and untie them? Or are they expected to like get down by themselves? How long do they keep them up there? Like, I don't understand this whole thing that they do. And I'm not saying that to say that it's written poorly or that it doesn't make sense. I just have more questions about it because it just seems like a very dangerous position to put somebody in. Someone could get hurt. But when it comes to hazing, a lot of people don't care about that. And unfortunately, there are people who have lost their lives in hazing situations. Clark eyes Lana Lang, his longtime crush, and Pete bets Chloe that he won't be able to get within 10 feet of her without collapsing. Side note, Clark is carrying a skateboard on his backpack in this episode. Do we ever actually see him ride that skateboard? Now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like I've never actually seen him on the board. And I have watched this show dozens of times. I cannot recall a scene where he was actually riding that thing. Chloe actually wins this bet that she places with Pete because Clark is able to get within 5 feet of Lana Lang, not 10, before he falls to his feet and drops all of his books. Why are all your books in your hands? What's in your backpack? Did you even put anything in your back? Why you got so many books? I understand the students be having a lot of books, okay? I was once a student. However, he's carrying about 37 different books. Put some of them in your backpack, boy. Lana hurries over to help Clark out as his books have scattered all across the ground, and she hands him back one particular book, surprised that he's reading it and questioning whether he's man or Superman. I hate that line. I didn't like it. I wish it wasn't in the show. They do it too many times. There are far too many times on this series where they make reference to Superman, but it is not done very well, and I don't appreciate it. Because that's a silly line. Why would you say that? Are you man or are you Superman? What are you talking about, Lana? Poor Clark is all jacked up in the presence of Miss Lang, and we find out that it is actually because Lana wears a necklace that is made out of kryptonite. And as many of you already know, kryptonite is Superman's one weakness. He cannot get within a couple of feet of kryptonite without getting sick. I'm not sure exactly what happens to him when he gets around kryptonite. Like, I'm assuming that it makes him like really nauseous and feels super weak and probably gives him like a really bad headache, and a combination of all those things. Yeah, like I can totally understand why you would not be able to function. It's just really unfortunate for Clark that the one girl that he has a crush on has to be wearing a necklace with the only thing that can harm him, a piece of his home planet. Cowabummer, dude. Lana's useless boyfriend Whitney, or as I like to call him, Bangs, because he got bangs. He just be having bangs throughout the show. He ain't on the show that long, but he got bangs, and I don't like them because personally, I can't take you seriously as a bully if you got bangs. Clark is collecting all his books from the ground. I'm not gonna lie though, I make fun of Whitney's hair, and I will continue to do so, but I didn't really mind him as his character progressed. Like, we meet him as kind of a dick, but later down the line, I'm kind of like, he's not that bad. But I so do not appreciate what he does to Clark later this episode, all right? You're not off the hook for that shit, Bangs. Whitney and Lana are making out. Clark's over there dying because of the kryptonite, still struggling to pick up his damn books. Whitney finds that he forgot one, and he tosses another book to Clark, causing him to drop all of the ones that he just collected from the ground. I'm not gonna lie, I did laugh, but that is rude. He tried so hard to pick up all of his books, and you gonna throw that book at him, and then all his books just drop on the ground again, and now he got to pick up all his books again. This is messed up. It's not fair. The least he could have done was been like, oh, my bad. I didn't mean to make you drop the rest of your books. He just gonna walk. Him and Lana just gonna walk away. They're gonna look over their shoulder and walk away. Y'all ain't no help. Lana, don't act brand new just because your boyfriend around, okay? Because he can get got too. We see Lex pull up to the Luthor Corp plant in a tiny car. And what I realized actually for the first time when I was watching this scene to take notes for this recap was that the plant is on the exact location that Lex and his father were on in 1989 when his father was making a deal for that land at the beginning of the episode. And I just thought that was a really interesting touch. You know, we get to see the payoff from him purchasing that land, and the payoff is a giant, ugly, pollution causing plant where a lot of people in Smallville work. Also, side note, Sam Jones must have had a huge growth spurt because he looks so tiny in this episode. No offense, Sam, no offense. Love you, love Pete, love him. He's so funny and sassy, but you look so small. He actually looks like a teenager. Clark looked like a grown-ass man with bangs. Pete and Chloe actually look like teenagers. I also want to say really quickly, though, that we did find out that Chloe does have a little bit of a crush on Clark in this episode when Pete asks if they're gonna go to the dance together. Chloe denies it, as a teenager would, because we've all been there. You're not gonna admit to your crush that you have a crush on them, you know what I mean? Especially when they're obviously crushing on somebody else. Who's taken, by the way. Also, I was uncomfortable about that. I mean, I know that they're only like 3-4 years apart, but I think at a certain age gap, relationships are kind of weird. Whitney is a senior, Lana is a freshman, meaning that she is 14 or 15 years old, and Whitney is 17 or 18, depending on, you know, if he was held back or if he was moved up a grade early. Like it really does depend, but something about a freshman and a senior dating is kind of icky to me. Remember the guy from the beginning of the episode who was tied to the pole? Yeah, so his name is actually Jeremy, and we see him in present day at Smallville High, looking exactly the same. He has not aged a single day. He's staring at the trophy case in Smallville High, breaks it. Did anybody see that? Nobody saw that? And steals a picture of 3 smiling football players, presumably the football players who strung him up on that pole in that field all those years ago. After school, Clark is sitting in the stands watching Lana practice because she's a cheerleader. The shot of him sitting in the stands all by himself is kind of creepy, I'm not gonna lie. And Pete comes up to him asking him how he looks, and he tells him he looks like a crash dummy. And he does, because everything that he's wearing for the football tryouts looks about 2 or 3 sizes too big for him. He looks tiny, he looks so small. I'm sorry once again, sir. Why didn't they get that boy some equipment that fit him? Afterwards, Clark is walking home. He's just contemplating on the bridge, thinking about his life, having a little sad teenager woe is me moment, when a truck that is carrying a bunch of like barbed wire or something wrapped up flies down the road, and one falls off the back of the truck. Lex Luthor is driving across the bridge in his cute little tiny Porsche. He's on his phone, he ain't paying attention, and he realizes a little bit too late that he's about to hit this barbed wire roll, and he swerves to avoid it. But upon doing so, ends up losing control of the car, hits it anyway, and then promptly hits Clark, who's standing on the bridge. The car and Clark fly off of the bridge into the water. Lex is clearly drowning in the car. He's unconscious, and Clark rips the top off of the car to save him. He pulls him out of the water and gives him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, bringing him back to life. And Lex is very confused because he could have sworn that he hit Clark, which he did. Clark just brushes it off because he's perfectly fine. So there's no way he hit him, right? Jonathan ends up at the scene of the crime, and he is very upset, as any parent would be. How did he find out that this happened? Who called him? Lex tries to introduce himself to Jonathan, but Jonathan is not having it. He already knows who Lex is. He's not interested, and he tells him, maybe next time you don't drive like a freaking maniac. Later that night, Clark is spying on his neighbors. Well, actually, he was looking at the stars. How beautiful. But then he immediately aims the telescope down and starts spying on Lana. He sees that Lana, who is actually his neighbor, is talking to Whitney on her porch. We get to hear Lana's conversation with Whitney, and she tells him that Clark saved Lex's life. Whitney is clearly a little bit jealous because Lana does seem a little into the fact that Clark is a bit of a hero. They talk about the fact that a scout is coming to watch the football game, and he's very excited because Whitney wants so badly to get out of this town. So Lana hands over her kryptonite necklace, letting him know that it was made from the same meteor rock that killed her parents. Cowabummer. She states that so much bad luck has come from it that there can only be good luck left. I don't know if that's how luck works, Lana. I don't know if that's how that works, but sure. That night at an auto shop, Jeremy approaches one of the former football players who strung him up in that field all those years ago. We learn that Jeremy has electrocution powers, and he electrocutes Frank, the football player, who falls and immediately starts pleading for his life, saying, "Oh, we didn't know, man. We didn't know that was gonna happen to you, man. You're only apologizing now because he electrocuted you and you're afraid to die." Jeremy is not having it. Okay, girl. So he just electrocutes that man. He electrocutes him very hard, and he ends up in a coma. Should he be going around hurting people? No, maybe not. Maybe we don't do that. Maybe we go to therapy. But at the same time, I mean, that kid almost died. He could have died, okay? You put somebody's life at risk, and for what, girl? The next day, Clark gets home and finds a brand new red and white truck sitting in the driveway. It's a big old truck, too. It's real shiny, and it's real smooth and round, and it's lifted a little bit. And he's like, oh, shit, whose truck is this? And his mom is like, yours, apparently. And he's like, oh, shit. But before he gets too excited, Martha's like, hey, your daddy got the keys, so you better go talk to your daddy, cause I wasn't gonna say nothing, but I don't think he's gonna let you keep the truck. We find out that the truck is from Lex. It's a gift for saving his life, and Jonathan is like, you not keeping it. And matter of fact, you could drive the truck, you could drive it back to the Luther mansion, get the truck back, get the keys back, tell him you not taking this truck. Clark is like, what the hell, man? Why I can't keep the truck? I saved his life. I saved his life. If I wasn't there, then yeah, because if I wasn't there, he would have died probably still. He still probably would have. And so for me personally, I feel like if I do that and then he want to be like, oh, here go a truck, then I should be able to keep the truck. And then Jonathan gonna be like, oh, so you think you should be rewarded because you saved somebody's life? First of all, Jonathan, your truck gets destroyed every single episode. Every time we see that truck, the very next scene, the truck done exploded, the windshield got busted out, it done rolled over 17 different times. I'm like, girl, how about maybe what if we just take this truck? It's gonna get destroyed in the next episode anyway. You might as well keep it, but no. He wants them to give it back. I wouldn't have told him to give it back. I wouldn't have gave it back. I would have kept the truck. Jonathan is like, you cannot trust him. You can't trust him. He a Luther. Luther. He a Luther. And you know what they do. They be handing out gifts, trying to talk about, oh, we giving you this, we giving you that, we doing this. And then before you know it, they taking your land and putting horrible places, putting horrible plants on top of it, putting all kinds of factories and stuff, kicking people out of their homes. No, we not keeping this truck. No, we can't trust the Luthers, girl. Jonathan's like, you could be upset. Like, that's okay. But like, that's like totally normal. Like, it's totally normal for you to be upset. So like, you would just gonna have to get over it. And Clark is like, girl, I'm not even normal though. But I'm not normal. As a matter of fact, I'm not. And to prove it, he sticks his arm in the wood chipper. I'm not necessarily mad at him for doing that, because I would have been pissed the fuck off too. I'd have been mad too. But at the same time, he could have at least rolled his sleeve up before he did that, because you know your parents is broke and now they gotta buy you a new shirt because you done destroyed your shirt. For what? This is stressing Jonathan out. So he's just like, oh my God, I gotta tell you something. So he actually shows Clark his spaceship. He lets him know, like, listen, you know how you adopted and all that? And Clark's like, yeah. Jonathan's like, well, you actually from space? You from space, it turns out. And Clark's like, what the hell are you talking about even? And Jonathan's like, yeah, you came from space. You know the meteor shower that had happened? And Clark's like, yeah. And Jonathan's like, yeah. So what had happened was that you actually had come down in a meteor shower. That's how we found you. You was next to a spaceship. And so that's what had happened. And Clark is like, why you ain't tell me about this before? Why you just now telling me this? You just now telling me that I'm from space? So what you trying to say? I'm an alien or something? What's wrong with you? Why you ain't telling me this sooner? Clark, how soon was he supposed to tell you that information? You're 14. You are 14. Quite frankly, I would have told you until you were 18. Or until I absolutely had to. Because you were a little too young to be worried about this kind of stuff. And I feel like telling a child, by the way, you're not actually from this planet, probably not a good idea. So Clark leaves the house. He runs away from home in distress. And he ends up at the cemetery very late at night and runs into Lana, who is visiting the cemetery to speak to her parents. Something that we learn is a pretty regular occurrence for her. But Lana, girl, why you gotta go in the middle of the night? It's cold. It's all foggy outside. It's dark. Like, I don't know, maybe I was just a wimp as a teenager, but nothing was bringing me into the cemetery in the middle of the night. Not even my dead parents. You could go before school. You could go in the daytime. You don't have to go at night, but she always there at night for some reason. This is actually Clark's first time having like an extended conversation with Lana, because she's not wearing her kryptonite necklace. She gave it to Whitney. And so he's able to actually get close to her and talk to her for a pretty decent amount of time without feeling sick. They bond over the fact that neither of them have their birth parents in their life. Clark because his died on Krypton, and Lana because hers died on Earth when she was super, super young. It's a really cute scene, and Clark asks Lana if she's going to the homecoming dance as they walk home together. Lana says she's going with Whitney, of course, and lets Clark know that if he changes his mind about going to the dance, that she'll save one for him. She kisses him on the cheek and heads home, and unfortunately Whitney saw the whole thing. I will admit, if I saw my girlfriend kissing the cheek of a guy who I knew had a crush on her, I wouldn't be too happy either. But I also would not do what Whitney decides to do next. The next day, Clark goes to the Luthor mansion to give the truck back, and Lex is in there fencing, and he almost actually hits Clark with his, what do they call the little thing that they use? He almost hits Clark with that. And Clark is like, hey, my daddy said that I can't keep this truck. And Lex is like, why? And Clark's like, cause my daddy, he don't like your daddy. And so he said we can't even trust y'all. He said that you probably just like your daddy. And for that reason, I cannot keep the truck. I want to keep the truck. I want to keep it. But he told me I can't keep it. So Lex is weird, and he's just like saying all these strange things. He's just like, do you believe that a man can fly? He's asking him if he thinks he's a bad person. Like, oh, you think I'm a bad person, Clark? You think I'm a bad person? Not yet. The reason he was asking him if he believed a man could fly is because apparently when Lex's heart stopped, he had this vision of him flying over Smallville. He then says that he doesn't want anything to stand in between their friendship. Lex. Clark is 14. We find out that during the meteor shower, Lex was actually 9 years old. So if Clark was about 2 or 3, that gives them about a 6-year age gap. And if Clark is in high school and he's about 14 years old in October of his freshman year, then that means that Lex is about 20, 21 years old. Lex, what friendship? Why are you trying to have a friendship with a 14-year-old? A third football player has been found in a coma, and Chloe and Pete are at the scene of the crime trying to figure out what's going on. They see Jeremy in the crowd and they're like, damn, who's that? They take a picture of him, head back to the school, to the office of the school's newspaper, The Torch, and they find the guy in a 1989 yearbook. Chloe's the editor for the school newspaper, by the way, if you didn't know. And yet another reason why I don't understand why she didn't find out Clark's secret sooner. I know he's a big fat liar, but still, girl, you gotta do better. So they learned that this guy Jeremy's actually been in a coma since the meteor shower. He hasn't aged a day, in fact, because he's suffering from an electrolyte imbalance. So you telling me that if my electrolytes get imbalanced, I won't age? So Jeremy's just going around Smallville electrocuting the shit out of people for what they did to him back in '89. Clark is very doubtful. He's like, girl, that don't even make sense. That don't even make sense. How could that even happen in the first place? Chloe and Pete decide that it is time to show Clark the Wall of Weird. The Wall of Weird is a collection of articles and pictures and information about all the weird things that have been going on in Smallville ever since the meteor shower. On the Wall of Weird, Clark sees a young Lana Lang on the cover of Time magazine, an image that was taken the day of the meteor shower. That is awful. That is awful. The picture, as we see, was clearly taken moments after she witnessed her parents die. Who took that picture in the first? Who took that picture? Clark gets so upset and he runs out as he realizes that that event happened the day that he arrived on Earth. And now we get into the perpetual self-blame of Clark Kent, deciding that everything bad that has happened in this town is all his fault. It's not your fault, actually. It's your parents' fault, but we'll get into that later. Clark gets into the parking lot of the school and runs right into Whitney. And so he decides that Clark is going to be this year's Scarecrow. Unfortunately for Clark, Lana gave her boyfriend her kryptonite necklace, a necklace that he currently is in possession of, which causes Clark to get very, very weak and very, very sick, and is unable to fight back against Whitney and the rest of the football players. Whitney actually puts the necklace on Clark, which makes the situation so much worse. Bangs is like, this is the closest you'll ever get to Lana. This necklace, this is the closest you'll ever get to her. So enjoy it. Like, that is so rude. Why would you do that? Also, that was your girlfriend necklace, and then you gonna put it on him. Like, didn't she want the necklace back? Now you just gonna put it on that man. Look, we'll get back into that later on, but it's a mess. They put him in the pickup truck, they take all his clothes off, and then they put the red S on his chest. Very, very Superman, very, very cunt. They strung my boy up in the middle of the field. He was just, all he was trying to do was live his life to the best of his ability, and now he just in the middle of a cornfield for no reason. Jeremy finds Clark in the middle of the field, and he's just like, damn, that's really wild. You know, they did the same thing to me. Looks like bullies never change. Clark is like, help me get there, help me. But for some reason, Jeremy's like, no, you're safer up there. So Jeremy leaves, but thankfully Lex is nearby, and he notices all the commotion. He recognizes Jeremy, and he's like, damn, who's that? but then immediately goes to help Clark. He finds Clark, unties him. The necklace somehow just falls off of Clark's neck, which I thought was kind of strange, but we're going to ignore that. Lex is like, what's going on? What's going on, little 14-year-old boy who I just met recently? Clark's like, I'm talking this shit, I gotta go. Lex picks up the necklace though. He does take the necklace, which I thought that was a little bit weird, but at the same time I was like, oh, maybe he just trying to give it back to the owner. But at the same time I'm like, you are just like a little bald weirdo. Jeremy's plan is to set off the sprinkler system at the homecoming dance and then electrocute everybody. That's kind of messed up. I mean, listen, I can understand you being upset at the jocks, but why everybody gotta die? Clark shows up and he's like, stop, don't do it. Jeremy's like, fuck all that. I'll blow all this shit up. And since you standing in my way, you gotta go too, homeboy. He tries to electrocute Clark. Nothing happens. So he grabs him and he throws him so he can't set off the sprinklers. Clark's like, you better stop. You better stop doing this before something bad happened to you. But Jeremy's like, hell no, I still got a little left in me. And so he jump starts this truck with his powers and immediately hits Clark, and then he smashes him through a brick wall, which looked very painful, but Clark is Superman, so it probably wasn't that bad. He crashes into the water main, as a matter of fact, and water is going everywhere. It's everywhere. It's like the Umbrella music video by Rihanna. Surrounded by all this water, Jeremy somehow electrocutes himself. Clark opens the door, Jeremy wakes up, and Clark realizes that he doesn't have any recollection of the events of, well, I guess the past 12 years or so. He asks where he is. Where am I? Who are you? And Clark's like, I'm Clark Kent, and you are in Smallville. Clark goes to the gym after the chaotic events of the evening and sees that Chloe and Pete are having a really great time at the dance, hanging out, dancing, drinking punch, all that fun stuff. And he gets quite sad as he notices that Lana and Whitney Bangs are dancing together. They've been crowned homecoming king and queen, and they share a kiss on the dance floor. Clark is forlorn, and as revenge for all of the events of the day, he decides to stack up all the trucks of all the football players that tried to put him up in the field. I mean, I guess not try. They did do that shit. So he stacks up all the trucks, and the students come out after the dance and they see it, and Whitney is not happy. But you know what, Whitney? That's what you get. That's exactly what your ass get, because you shouldn't even been doing all that. You shouldn't even did all that to my man, because he didn't even do nothing wrong. Yes, he do have a crush on your girl. However, they the same age. You're just being a freaky weirdo. Back at the Kent farm, Clark is in the loft and he's looking through his telescope, and Jonathan comes up and lets him know that his father actually gave him that telescope when he was Clark's age. Clark and his father reconcile, with Clark stating that he's really happy that his parents were the ones who found him. Jonathan lets him know, though, in a similar manner that Martha did earlier in the episode, that they didn't find Clark. Clark found them. Clark continues to look through his telescope, and we see Lana come into the loft. They share a dance. She asks him if everything is okay, and he replies that everything is perfect. But then we hear a car horn and realize that Clark was simply engrossed in his own reverie, and Lana was actually never there. He looks outside and he sees that the honking was actually the car of students that dropped Lana off at her home, and she has arrived back at her front door after the dance. Clark watches her longingly and whispers, "Thanks for the dance." And we see Lana turn around, almost as if she heard him. We end the episode on a shot of Clark in his loft as the chorus to Lighthouse's Everything plays in the background. What a beautiful start to the series. For a pilot episode, I think that this was really fantastic. I think that they hit every note they were supposed to. I think the episode was a lot of fun. It had its funny moments, it had its relatable moments, it had its cozy moments, had its weird moments, all the things that we know and love about Superman. I remember sitting on the floor in my nana's house watching this show for the first time when it premiered on the WB, and just thinking oh, well, there goes another obsession. Like, I immediately loved it. I was a huge fan right off the bat, and I still am to this day. This is a really beautiful series, and I think that it's one of, if not the best series that was produced by the WB. And you can disagree with me if you want, but there is a reason that a lot of people still flock to this show. It's really well done, has an amazing cast, banging soundtrack, and overall it's just like a really fun show to watch. Anyways, that's gonna be it for today's episode of Late Nights at the Talon. I really appreciate you for sticking around, and if you enjoyed this episode, then please leave a like. And if you would like to see more content just like this, or better and definitely not worse, you could always subscribe to my channel. And if you decide to do that, I really appreciate you so much, and I will see you in the next video.